Good morning, Sonic. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today, we've got probably the most special episode we've ever done. We are joined by the man, the myth, the CEO himself, Michael Kong. You want him, we got him. And this won't be your standard softball blockmates interview, bros. We're really going to put the screws to this guy. Also, we recently came across some new Sonic merch. We'll be giving away a few free items to our beloved viewers. So stay tuned, folks. Let's get this show started.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, dude, good morning. Dude, I promised them Kong, dude, and they got Dracula instead. What the hell? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I'm taking his place today, actually. This whole thing was a ruse once again.
Dude.
So I hope everybody's okay with that. I mean, but no, we have Michael Kong here. Really excited to chat with him. Just like real quick, we were also excited to set up this little giveaway and thought it'd be better to set it up like top of the show real fast. So if you haven't seen yet, they've created a Sonic swag store, and the idea with it is, basically they're going to be handing out codes for you to pick stuff from the store, and this is like all included with these codes. I mean, so you pick an item and it covers even the shipping, which is wild. So that's why you're kind of seeing these crazy prices here is, they're actually free when you have a code, but lots of cool stuff. I think it's a pretty I think it's a cool initiative to keep people engaged, come listen to the spaces, watch the streams, whatever there is out there. So we got 5 codes today.
So $5 million worth of
we're giving away $5 million worth of gear. So
how are we doing this? How are we deciding who gets the codes? I'm thinking we do this. A lot of people do a drawing or a lottery. I'm saying, nah, dude, we're just gonna pick, dude. So the best comments, the best interaction we're getting in the chat, I think those should be who gets. What do you think, Dracula?
I think that sounds good. So best question, best interaction. Write something on the stream, write something in the comments for the X post that's streaming right now, and we'll get in touch with a few people based on the interactions, and you will be on your way to showing everybody your twerking for free merch. I think that's pretty good. That's a pretty good idea. Yeah, we're already I'm gonna just glance real fast, see what we got so far. Okay. Doesn't Corval look handsome? That's what I was looking for. Yes, he does.
I like that one. All right. The Funeral knows how to play the game. All right. Well, that's it, folks. So go ahead and check out that, the merch, see what you want, get your hopes up, and then start getting in the chat.
And if you just want to check it out, it's just linked up in the new Sonic Labs website. So definitely go check that out. And we won't waste any more time. I know everybody's ready. So I'm going to
do it.
Throw him up here on the stage. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Yeah.
Good morning, Michael.
So glad to have you here. We really appreciate you hopping on with us. We just thought, hey, episode 50, it would be cool to, we're so close to Sonic. Just thought it would be a great opportunity to chat with you. And we were just going to get right into it. I was just going to start things off with saying, it's been quite a journey. I mean, a lot's happened in a year, and you announced the Sonic, the new Sonic L1. I think it was, just not too long from now. It was like December. I think you guys were at a show in Colorado, and you guys have made a ton of changes since then. And I'm just wondering, if you could just kind of guide us a little through like the origins of Sonic. Like, how did you guys come to, okay, we're gonna move to Sonic? It's not just gonna be like a Fantom upgrade anymore.
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations on 50 episodes. Thank you very much for inviting me onto the 50th episode in particular. So, you guys have me for the whole hour. Happy to answer any questions. And yeah, thanks for your first question, which I guess kind of sets the scene for all the other questions down the line, I guess, related to Sonic. So the way that Sonic came about was, it was really Andre that came up with the idea. So last year, we were sort of exploring, should we rebrand? Should we set up a new chain? What are the pros and cons of it, etc. And at the time, we kind of decided internally, not to go ahead with it. for a number of reasons. But then essentially early this year, we decided, no, it actually makes sense for several reasons to do this rebrand. One was there were technical reasons for launching a new chain. A lot of it has to come down to the lot of technical improvements that the team had made to the performance of the underlying chain that really couldn't be made with the existing network. Because just use an analogy like I've used before, if you're flying a plane and you're changing the plane as you're flying it, it's a lot harder than just building the plane from the ground and then flying that. And so there were a lot of technical changes, which I won't go into all the specific detail of, like launching the new chain to really like maximize the performance of all the hard work and research that Professor Schultz and his team had been up to over the past couple of years. And coupled with that, we were thinking, okay, well, since we're launching this new chain, why not also do a new rebrand as well? Because Fantom is a chain that's been around for a while, or project been around for a while. Some people may in the community now may still have been around as it was in early 2018. A lot of people don't know the whole history of it, but Fantom was a project that did an ICO all the way back in 2018. So that was the tail end of the ICO boom from 2017 to 2018. And we raised about $41 million by June 2018. It was, I think, one of the most popular ICOs of the time. And then, we put in a lot of work with Andre in particular and others to launch the chain in the end of 2019, December 2019. And so we thought that, it would be good to like refresh the brand along with the new chain, do the new token, and also basically, Fantom has had good history, has also had not so good of a history. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. We want to kind of like a fresh start, especially since the team now that we have at Sonic is very, very different from the original team that we had at Fantom. So it was for those reasons we decided also on the rebrand as well with the launch of the new chain. But essentially, like the genesis of the idea really came from Andre. He kind of like laid out the groundwork as to like why it would really make sense to do the rebrand, use Sonic, launch the new chain, and in particular, he was the one that came up with a specification for the new Sonic gateway or bridge that we've got coming out for the new chain as well. Learning the lessons, for example, from multi-chain and also the lessons from other bridges as well. Having fail safes, having it a lot more decentralized, having it not controlled, purely by the foundation. So yeah, that's really the background.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the gateway, because I feel like, when you're talking about multi or whatever, obviously a lot of people were, hesitant about the bridging situation, and you guys really like just with the gateway, you truly just, like eased any concerns. I know a lot of people are excited, especially, for it to be like native assets coming in. So I was going to ask you to talk about that just a little bit, because I know when you guys first announced it, you were describing how it's like, it's technically like an L2 that lets you come in from Ethereum. And I think at first there were actually people that were kind of like confused, like, is, Sonic and L2, that kind of stuff. But I was just wondering, for anyone that's still not totally familiar with the gateway, I was just wondering if you could kind of like walk through that process and like why it's important.
Yeah, so unfortunately, like some of our language was not so accurate early in the year. A lot of it that has to do with what I was saying back, I think around like February or March is when we started talking about the new network and the new branding. So you mentioned like Colorado. So it was ETH Denver when we started making announcements regarding this all the way back in February earlier this year. But essentially what like Sonic is that it's its own standalone L1. So it's its own chain, has its own validator set, all purely proof of stake. Essentially, similar like economic model to what we have now with the existing, what we call the Opera network that's being deprecated. And then what kind of makes it like unique though is, as you mentioned, like the gateway, right? And the gateway is essentially like a bridge that also runs via proof of stake. And what I mean by that is that it has its own validator set. To begin with, it will be the same validator set for the new Sonic L1. And it will begin by having a bridge to Ethereum. So in other words, if you have assets on Ethereum, you can move them to Sonic and back and forth. But what makes it kind of like unique compared to like a lot of the other bridges out there is that one, it's not going to be centrally controlled. So a lot of bridges out there are centrally controlled. They're basically run by multi-sigs from the team. But the bridge this time around is not run by just like a bunch of like multi-sigs from the foundation or from whoever. It's run by a validator set. It's all purely proof of stake that will be confirming the transactions to and from Ethereum. And the bridge, we have all the intention to have the bridge connect to other chains as well. But obviously, naturally, it makes sense to begin with Ethereum first, so we can, move assets across, because Ethereum obviously has, the most liquidity and is, the biggest smart contract chain out there. But there's nothing stopping us from connecting to other chains as well, EVM and non-EVM based. And the bridge also uniquely has what we call like a fail-safe feature. So in the unlikely event that like the bridge were to go down or the Sonic network were to go down, people's assets wouldn't be stranded and just thinking about, okay, how do I get my money back? People who bridge their assets or own the like bridge assets on Sonic or Ethereum would be able to essentially get their assets back after about a 14-day period if we're not able to start up the bridge or the Sonic L1 network during that period of time. And that means that essentially that when you're bridging assets, say from Ethereum to Sonic, you have like a receipt that you have bridged like say like one particular token over to the Sonic network, and therefore in the unlikely event that the bridge or the Sonic network were to go down after 14 days, you would still be able to retrieve the underlying asset that was bridged from Ethereum on the Ethereum network itself. So all of these features are being fully developed. Currently, the bridge is undergoing 3 audits. We've got 1 clean audit back. We've got 2 other audits that have provided us very useful feedback about, a number of like relatively like minor issues related to the bridge and additional documentation that's required. So that's happening right now this month. But so far, it's tracking well. The testing is going really well. We're beginning to launch the new network this month, actually. Firstly, in sort of like a testing phase, and then actually preparing for the December launch, where people will then be able to start launching their applications and doing the required infrastructure from all the infrastructure partners we've got on board that we've announced, and really start building the new chain. So that's where we're at this stage.
Awesome, man. And there's 2 things I'd like to address with that real quick. One thing that's music to my ears is you said non-EVM chains could be eligible as well. I think that would be huge. Obviously, with the traffic and market that Solana has, I think that would be gigantic. And then also, Yankee Ruin here has a pretty good question, actually. He says, do assets have to be whitelisted to use Gateway, or is everything supported by default? If I have coin XYZ on ETH, can I send it through the Gateway?
Yeah, so my understanding is if you follow particular token standards, say like ERC 20, it should by default be able to be bridged across. And it would have the same sort of functionality that I described, with like the fail safe and all the transactions being confirmed by the bridge validators.
Yeah, so that is huge, actually. That's very good news. So another thing that you had mentioned briefly in your opening was the expansion of the team. And I think everyone's been able to notice a shift, like just a lot of activity, everyday activity. And I was wondering if you could kind of just talk about some of the new people on the team, what they're up to. Because I've seen a good bit of chatter about how, you guys have been expanding the team. So
yeah, so we've had a number of new team members recently join us. We've had some turnover on the team. I think people have definitely noticed that since probably around like mid-August, the marketing has kind of changed. And so, I think prior to August, I don't think our marketing was necessarily that the best. In other words, we weren't like saying and engaging the community to the level that we are now. And we can see that our results when it comes to say like Twitter and other like metrics, the number of like likes, engagements, followers has really gone up like quite dramatically. And a lot of that has to do with, how we revamped the marketing team and additional people we got on board. So, we've hired an individual, for example, called Johan, who's ex-Polygon. He focused on a lot of getting DeFi protocols on Polygon. So now he's working with us full-time, getting DeFi protocols and other projects on the new Sonic network as well. We hired an individual commonly known as Seg. So he used to be a developer in the Fantom community, and also came from the insurance space. And he essentially is working on a lot of like dev relations. So I think one of the key things is that with the launch of the new network, we're learning a lot of lessons from the current Fantom network, right? In terms of not just like technology improvements, but also in terms of like how we basically succeed as a community. And one of the things that we missed out on is not having like a dedicated dev relations individual full time. He will be able to like engage with the community and developers and users 24/7 essentially. And so that's what primarily this new individual does. So he will, he's working on documentation, for example. He's working on setting up a whole bunch of like AI bots as well to help like answer people's questions more efficiently than we've done in the past. So for example, we set up like with the validator group that we have, he set up a bot there and dedicated like individual channels that people can message him directly about any issues that come up. So we've got a new dev relations person on board full time, and he started beginning of October. And then we recently hired, we haven't announced this yet publicly, I think, but we also announced like another front-end developer called Christian. He was also a developer in the Fantom community. He's really, really good. He's the one that's responsible for the new Sonic labs.com of reviewing the changes related to the smart contracts, the SFC for the new network. And he's just doing a lot of stuff for us in the background as well that you'll be hearing about. So we've had a whole bunch of personnel changes. We've promoted Ash and Luis, that I think a lot of people in the Fantom community are well aware about. They've been absolutely fantastic on the marketing. They've been pushing out a lot of content. They're the ones responsible for a lot of content that's coming out on Twitter and elsewhere. And so we've expanded on their roles as well. So we've been in the process for hiring constantly, from changing our personnel. And I think right now we've got an excellent team for the launch of the new Sonic network. And we've also expanded a few engineers on the technical team as well, building a new consensus that we're going to launch sometime next year is the current plan. And also, but primarily, obviously, we're focusing on the launch of the new network before the end of the year.
Dude, that's awesome. It sounds like all of these efforts are really moving in the right direction. I don't know if I mind if I cut in here, Dracula.
Yeah.
I have an possibly incisive question. I kind of want to get a feel for, so we've seen this from, I guess, the retail side, like this really large movement on the BD and marketing side. And at the same time, if you look around the general crypto space, we've seen a lot of, different chains launch. I mean, it's kind of like a meme now, right? It's a new chain launching every other week or whatever. A lot of them are failing because they don't have, I don't want to say failing. A lot of them have had rough starts because they don't have a lot of innovative projects launching or projects launching with the network. Could you tell us like a little bit about how these efforts are paying off? Like, are you guys getting to see like the outside developer interest you're expecting, and what kind of numbers? We're looking at 100,000 new protocols on Sonic, or what are we talking about here?
Oh, like there's a whole BD list that we're going through in terms of like inbounds and outbounds, and I think it is like in the hundreds now.
Nice.
Not like 10,000 or 100,000. I don't think there are even like 10,000, 100,000 like protocols in the entire like blockchain space at this point in time. And we've definitely got like a few hundred. I think a lot of it comes down to having the right infrastructure partners, having the right incentives for people to want to launch a new network, right? And fundamentally, it comes down to this, right? Everyone is like driven by incentives. As Charlie Munger, I think, famously said, show me the incentive and I'll show you the result, right? So in other words, like we put ourselves in the position of the user or the developer, right? Like, who are our customers? Okay, they are users and they are developers. Why would developers want to build on Sonic? Why would they be incentivized to do it, to choose over other chains? Why would a user want to come to Sonic and not use applications on other chains? That's always the fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves whenever we're doing stuff. And so when it comes to, for example, like developers, why would developers want to launch on Sonic? Well, we've got like the fee initiative, fee monetization initiative, where projects can earn up to 90% of the transactions that they generate from the applications that they launch on the new Sonic network. That's a big incentive, because a big method of revenue generation for projects is going to be for the transaction fees alone, which is why you see like major dApps want to launch their own chains, but that of course comes at a cost, right? Launching your own chain means that you have to maintain not just your application, but the new chain as well. It means that you have to like allocate developer resources, spend time and effort, and of course there's security issues you have to consider as well. Whereas like for example, if you launch on Sonic, you're going to earn up to 90% of the transaction fees. Okay, that's not 100%, but then you don't have to deal with launching a new chain and all the time and effort that goes into it. You can just build your application and just run it smoothly on Sonic. So that's an example. For example, that's an example of like the sort of like incentives that we're trying to attract developers onto the new network about, and really thinking about it from their perspective. Okay, does this make sense economically? Does this make sense from a business point of view? Because in the end, all developers are basically running businesses. That's why they're running their applications. And then on the user side, why would users want to come to Sonic? Well, first of all, if the developers are there running popular applications that people want to use, then they're going to be more attracted to come to Sonic than to go to other networks. And we also have, for the new network, as people know about, I think, incentives there for the users when it comes to airdrops, when it comes to gems, when it comes to interacting with a whole bunch of protocols in the network. So, there's, the economics incentive, there's incentive from the technology of having something that's reliable, that's really fast, that can handle large numbers of transactions. Network isn't going to go down, which of course is a security issue, and you have a very smooth like technical experience as well. And on top of that, having a lot of infrastructure partners and available for developers that we didn't have for the current network. So, for example, we announced like Chainlink CCIP, we announced Gnosis Safe, we announced a whole bunch of other infrastructure partners that will be coming to the new network that we didn't have previously. And a lot of that came from getting feedback from the developer community at Fantom. Okay, you as a developer, what do you want on the network? What is missing on the current network? Okay, we don't have CCIP, we don't have native stablecoin, we don't have Gnosis Safe, we don't have all of these things. We need these things as a developer for us to be able to launch our application on your network. Okay, so we took that feedback into account, and now we have these partners for the new Sonic network, and there's additional partners that we'll be announcing as well based on the feedback we got from developers. So in the end, it's all about thinking about from the developer's perspective, from the user's perspective, why would I want to come to the new network? That's the question that we're always trying to answer.
Yeah, and I think something huge I've noticed, when I saw you speak at Consensus, you guys kind of came out and made an opening statement that, Sonic it's coming back for DeFi. It's going to be the DeFi chain. And I was very excited to hear that. But what I also noticed, which I think is bullish, I've noticed that you guys are kind of rolling out incentives that are not totally akin to last run's incentives. I think there were pros and cons to last run, the incentives that Fantom rolled out, in terms of it brought a lot of people, but it also brought a lot of, not so great people. But I feel like these new incentives are just like very bullish to, once again, I feel like it's kind of like it's like ringing the bell for DeFi to bring projects back. And, I know you guys have Sonic Boom and Sonic Grants. And I was just wondering if you could just speak a little bit on both of those. I know Sonic Boom's actually going to do kind of like a blast, with the gems. I guess it's kind of like the blast points to bring like developers and users. So I just wondering if you could like walk through some of these like new incentives for builders.
Yeah, the incentive program for the new network is really based upon like learning our lessons from the previous incentive program that Fantom had. So Fantom back in February, I think it was 2021, in September 2021, we announced like an incentive program, a big incentive program. But the problem there is that it wasn't really like structured correctly. So first of all, a lot of it was focused on just like TVL and getting TVL and maintaining TVL. Well, naturally, if you're just talking about TVL, you're talking about like a specific subset of DeFi applications rather than activity for the network as a whole. And what we're really interested in as a network isn't so much just like, a subset of applications or just like particular metrics like TVL. The only metric that really counts in the end is about how much transaction volume and fees are you generating for the network. Because fundamentally, like the business case for running like a chain is essentially being able to generate significant transaction fees for the validators, but doing it at a low cost per individual user. So in other words, what you want is you want to have a network that is being used by as many people as possible, generating as many transactions as possible, but each transaction is low cost. But in aggregate, when you add up all the transaction fees from all these, hopefully millions of transactions on a daily basis, if not more, that in aggregate is a significant amount of fees for the validators for the network, because the validators obviously need to get paid for maintaining the network. And so like what we've done for the new incentive program is really learning the lessons from why the previous incentive program didn't work, and also learning from other incentive programs as to like what they did that did work and what they did that didn't work. And so that's why we designed, the Sonic Boom program and other programs that are really based on that, feedback from other chains and also from our prior incentive program as well. So, the Sonic Boom program is really geared towards developers building any sort of application that becomes popular in Fantom, so not or popular on Sonic. So not just anything like specific related to like DeFi or gaming or NFTs, but anything really that is able to get really popular for the new network. Because, as I just mentioned, for the new network, in the end, it's about, being able to get users, retain users, and generate large numbers of transactions and ultimately transaction fees. And so we made the program more general, where it's about like any application that really can generate activity. That's also why like fee monetization is a good idea as well, because that is also like agnostic from specific types of protocols. It's just about, okay, if your protocol gets popular, you make more money. And so the incentives get aligned then, because the developers are incentivized to get users and to generate transaction volume. We're also incentivized to generate transaction volume for the reasons I mentioned there, which is to generate the transaction fees. And so as long as you like align incentives positively that help grow the network and create like a healthy level of competition, then that is essentially like a race to the top. That's essentially like why a free market in general like works so well. And so the incentive boom program is also about competition as well. Projects competing with one another, trying to get as many users as possible, trying to get as many gems or points as possible, so they can generate income for themselves and also for their users too. So that really is like the motivation of Boom program and other programs we've got coming out as well.
I personally noticed, like from people that I've talked to, that the fee monetization thing is like very appealing. For exactly like you said, that they're confident that their projects, their products really can generate enough activity. So it's a nice way to structure it that way, as opposed to how kind of Yankee Ruin's explaining it here, the previous incentive program, where you can kind of game it. If I just lock up enough money, I can milk the foundation for money. We kind of create like an actual cycle here, as opposed to like just pouring into buckets. Very cool.
Yeah.
I wanted.
Oh, go ahead, Corey.
Yeah. No, you got it, dude.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're talking about the builder incentives, but something else I found really interesting was the restructure to the staking on the network. So if I recall correctly, obviously right now, Fantom, you would be locked up for a year, but on Sonic, the max lock, I think you're locked for 14 days at a time, which is a huge change, but I think it's a great one. And I was just wondering, if you could, kind of lay out what the thoughts were for, this shift in like the staking and how it works.
Yeah. So the way that the staking works on the Fantom network is that, as I think a lot of people are well aware of, it's governed by a smart contract called the SFC, special fee contract. And essentially what the SFC does is that it does all the calculations on chain as to like the allocation of like rewards, right, for the validators. So, it maintains like a list of the validators, the addresses, okay, how many people have participated in what we call like an epoch or a period of time when confirming transactions, and then allocates, the transaction fees that are generated and the block rewards for those validators. So there's one really significant change that we're having to the SFC for launching for the new network, and these changes have already been made, and they're about to undergo an audit. But essentially, for the Fantom network, we had this linear staking model where if you stake anywhere or you lock up your tokens anywhere from 2 weeks to a year, then you earn like an increase in your APR, right? Proportional to the number of days essentially that you've been locking up for. There's a big problem though with that staking model, and we're trying to be clever about it, because we're trying to adds to security because it locks people in for like longer and they're incentivized to do it. The problem there is that it was very unattractive to liquid staking protocols. And at the time, back in December 2019, we were launching the new network, and we had this linear staking model. We, didn't really realize that this would cause a lot of problems with liquid staking providers. The liquid staking providers don't really exist on the Fantom network currently because of the way that the staking model works. Because liquid staking providers, as implied by the name, need to have liquidity. And so if a lot of tokens are locked up for like a year period, and that's how you maximize returns, liquid staking providers can't really integrate with the chain because there's just not enough liquidity on a shorter term basis to be able to, for people to be able to like redeem the underlying liquid staking tokens. And so there becomes like a lot of like risk for these liquid staking token providers. And therefore, like a big motivation for the new network was basically simplifying the staking. And again, like learning lessons from other networks. A lot of other networks basically have a much simpler staking model than we did. They have, like an unbonding period or a lockup period of, some, I think, ranging from like, 21 days for some networks, 14 for others, etc., if I remember correctly. And so we looked at those and networks and we're like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. That's a lot more simple than the current model at the moment. It's also like easier to code. That's no problem as well. It simplifies the SFC, the way that it operates, less risky from a security perspective as well. And these other chains that have the simplified staking model, they also have liquid staking providers that have no problem integrating with the way that the proof of stake model works. And so we took those lessons and we're like, okay, makes sense to just simplify everything. And so for the new SSC, for the new network, we're just going to have a simple one rate for everyone. You stake your token, you delegate your token. When you want to undelegate the token or unstake your token, you just have a 14-day unbonding period or unstaking period, and then you can withdraw your token. And a lot of the changes as well also came from feedback from liquid staking token providers. So when we spoke to these LSTs, we were like, okay, we plan to implement the simplified version of the SFC. Does that make sense for you guys? And they said, yeah, that's what we do for other chains. Easy to integrate. If your models are the same, makes our lives a lot easier. Okay, that's fantastic, because now we're taking that feedback, implementing it for the new network. So it will be a lot easier for LSTs to want to launch on the new network, which means additional liquidity, which means higher TVL, which means more engagement, which means a better user experience. So again, like another lesson learned from the existing Fantom network, which really motivated us to simplify the new SFC.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a really kind of agile change, right? You kind of like responding to essentially changes in the market because, when this initial staking program launched, I don't think liquid staking was even like a thing, right? Kind of like an innovation and a response to that. I had a question, kind of going a little bit back to, that big BD list you got. Look, I wrote it out here, all professional. Like the crypto market has changed significantly since the last surge in DeFi. With I think we can agree, kind of definite big winners and losers forming. Like you've got protocols that are kind of dominating specific spaces in DeFi. Are you seeing the level of interest in DeFi you were expecting since the launch of the Builder program? And on your BD list, are you seeing like as many, I guess, new and novel and smaller teams as you would expect? Or is it mainly like the big guys coming?
It really is a mixture of both. So we've got like a lot of interest on the DeFi side, as we might expect, given like Fantom's background and success in DeFi in 2021. I think we were the second or the third largest chain in terms of TVL. We had over $10 billion of TVL. A lot of people like know that history. A lot of people that are around in the space right now were also around in the space in 2021. Obviously, Andre as a quote unquote DeFi god, as he's popularly known as in the community. It's not something that we coined. It's something that, the community coined, and people in general, his branding and his, skills obviously like, rub off on Sonic or Fantom in a good way. And so, we've got a lot of like interest in DeFi. I mean, we've got major protocols that have announced and will be announcing launching on the new Sonic network, having their own incentives combined with our incentives. But we also have like a lot of smaller like projects as well, like smaller projects that plan to launch, natively on the new network that are all based upon like lending and borrowing, leverage trading and swapping, etc. All the typical stuff that people expect in DeFi. We also have a lot of other protocols from other networks that are looking to launch on the new Sonic network as well. And in particular, for some of the other chains that haven't launched their own mainnet and haven't really like stated when the new mainnet has come out. Some like interesting feedback that I got, for example, from Token 24 in Singapore and earlier, is a lot of people were really happy to hear that we had a more definitive date from when the new mainnet was going to be launched, which is at the end of the year. Because they were saying to me like, oh, well, for other networks, we wanted to launch natively there, but we're not sure when the new network is going to come out. And that really bothers us because, we want to launch a new protocol. We need to have a timeline. We can't just wait indefinitely to launch on the new chain that we want to launch at. So we're very much interested in launching on Sonic, in part because we know that you guys have a more definitive timeline for when the mainnet is going to come out, and the specific like incentives and the way that the technology works as well. Obviously, with the Sonic testnet already launched. So yeah, we've got a lot of interest from DeFi. We've got some interest as well from non-DeFi applications as well. But to be honest, like a lot of the applications that are interested in launching are related to DeFi, which kind of like makes sense to us. But for the reasons I mentioned there. However, it's important to know that the new chain and the new bridge and the new branding isn't geared towards a specific type of application, whether it's DeFi or something else. It really is like a generalized smart contract platform that allows anyone to want to create their own application on the new network, whether it's DeFi, gaming, NFTs, or whatever it might be in particular.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, sorry, Director, but I just guess it's kind of a flaw in my own language, I guess, because of how I operate in crypto. It's almost synonymous to me with DeFi, but there are a lot of other applications for smart contracts like gaming and NFTs and the like. So it's good to hear you guys have a diversity of stuff coming. So we're going to have a full suite of products to play around with on Sonic, right? I just wanted to make that statement. Go ahead, Dracula.
No, I was just going to bring up something else I was thinking about that I think sounds really interesting. And you don't see like a ton on it quite yet. I know you guys have put out some information, but the Sonic University or Sonic U program, I think that sounds, from what I've like gathered on it, you guys kind of like sponsor events and do other things. And I guess apparently there was like a Midwest conference you guys were sponsoring, and just wanted to like get some insight on that program and like what you guys are trying to do with that.
Yeah, so this is one of the marketing initiatives that we launched recently, and a lot of it has to do with, it was an idea that originated from Lewis on the team. So Lewis came up with the idea of, okay, how do we reach out to more people? Okay, let's engage more with universities. And so he was really driving this initiative. And so the Sonic University initiative is really reaching out to developers at universities, but not just like American universities, which is where a lot of initiatives typically are, but also universities from, all around the world in different countries. So we've got, for example, we're working with, a company that is reaching out to a lot of universities and students in the Philippines and other countries as well. But so far, we've announced with Sonic University a number of universities that we're partnered up with the US, and we've also sponsored the Midwestern Blockchain Conference, as you mentioned, and that is like a university conference of a bunch of universities in the Midwest, as the name implies. That's going to be happening, I think, around like mid-November, so just in a couple of weeks or so. And Lewis is going to be there in person talking about, Sonic and presenting there. And yeah, I mean, these initiatives are really important because it's all just about like outreach, right? It's about reaching as many developers as possible. It's about getting your name out there. And it's also about like being able to find, great developers that are out there. I mean, at universities around the world, there are some developers out there that are just really, really good developers. And if you can get them to, get them to hear about Sonic, get them to build upon the new chain, get them to basically like launch popular applications, then not only is it an opportunity for them to do like really, really well on the new network, but it's also an opportunity for us to identify talent. And also, if they succeed on the new network, building a popular application and building a name for themselves, that obviously like builds up the reputation for Sonic as well. And so that's like one of the initiatives. And there's a whole bunch of other initiatives as well that the team has come up with. For example, Andy from the marketing events team, I think he originally came up with the idea for what we call Sonic and Sodas, right? And so the Sonic Soda initiative is allowing people in around the world from wherever they may be to kind of like launch their own Sonic communities, to launch their own conferences and events, sponsored by in part from the foundation as well. And so that's another community outreach program that we didn't necessarily have for the existing Fantom network that we announced recently. And we already had events, for example, like in Lisbon and elsewhere that have been successful. And it's all about like growing communities in the end, right? Because it's all about, getting the users on board. It's about, getting your name out there. It's about getting good developers on board as well. So yeah, we've got a number of like different BD and marketing initiatives, and a lot of it is just driven by the team that we have at the moment. So what I really like about our current team is that, I think we're just a team of doers. It's just about people who just get stuff done, to put it simply. And Andre and I were having this conversation that, originally we were thinking, okay, we've become, a more mature company. We need to have like a more hierarchical structure, etc. And then we kind of realized, while we're walking through it, no, that doesn't make sense. All we need to have are people who just do stuff, right? People who just wake up and come up with ideas and say, hey, we should do this. And then we walk through it. And, the idea might be great. The idea might not be so great. The idea might, need some tweaking, etc. But as long as we just, as long as the team generates ideas and executes on them, that's all that really matters. And that's how Sonic University came about, Sonic Sodas that I mentioned, and other initiatives too.
Yeah, I know you were talking about some of like the new hires earlier, and I was definitely pleased to hear. I believe it's Johan. You said came from Polygon, and I guess his role, from what I gathered, was kind of like he's spearheading, getting working with DeFi protocols and bringing in DeFi and kind of like overseeing the development of DeFi on the chain. So I know that position in particular. Is there any insight we can get on that as far as like what he's up to? How he's kind of like cultivating DeFi coming over.
Yeah, so Johan is, you mentioned, is ex-Polygon. He was driving a lot of DeFi initiatives there. So he has a lot of contacts in the DeFi space with a number of like protocols. I'm not going to list out the names quite yet, but essentially, he's been reaching out to a lot of his contacts. He's been pitching Sonic. The good news is that because of like the positive marketing that we've been having over the past few months and the way that we pivoted our marketing, we have like a lot of people who already know about us. And so I think our name is quite well known. It's quite out there. So it makes like the rest of our jobs a lot easier, particularly on the BD side, because, when we're reaching out to certain protocols that we think are very interested in launching on the new network, they've already heard about us. They already know something about us. And so that's a much easier pitch, obviously, because it's more of like, it becomes more of a warm lead rather than just a cold outreach where nobody really knows about you and you kind of have to start from ground zero. So Johan has just been like essentially working through a lot of contacts, having a lot of conversations, negotiating a lot of deals, just doing, the stuff that you expect him to do. But in addition to that, Johan's also been like really important in terms of like structuring the incentives as well and structuring different programs. So, he gave us a lot of feedback, for example, on the Sonic Boom program and other programs that we've got as well, structuring different like ideas on how to encourage projects to come on the new Sonic network. Some ideas that we took on board, some ideas that we kind of like parked for now for a number of different reasons. So he's also worked on the incentive side, on the business development side, and also just outreaching to different DeFi projects, as you mentioned.
Awesome. We had a question here from someone saying, how influential was he in getting partners like Pendle on board? That might be a little bit difficult to answer, but...
Well, I can speak generally. Yeah, it was... Yeah. He participated in it. Same with other BD people on the team as well, like Madden as well. They've been around for a while. In particular, Sam has been around since the end of 2019. And they're just doers. They just go out there, they just talk to people, they just negotiate. And so it was a team effort that got Pendle on board launching for the new Sonic network. And there are other like fantastic other protocols that I'm really happy to be announcing soon that also will be launched on the new Sonic network. So yeah, we're getting, the big well-known names out there that are really, really popular, that we know that are popular because we can see it on other chains that are coming to Sonic. And we also have, other smaller, maybe not so well-known protocols at the moment, but are protocols that have the potential to get really, really big as well. And I think you need a combination of both. If you just have big protocols coming to your network and that's all you kind of cater for, then you miss out on potentially like a lot of other opportunity where smaller protocols can become big protocols. Because obviously, like all protocols started off small. It's just a matter of execution, right? It's like how all businesses started off as small businesses and they became very, very large, or at least some of them did. And so that's what we want to cultivate is, we want to get big projects on board because obviously they're popular. It drives a lot of, attention to us. it makes the chain look good as well, that, big projects are launching on it. But also, we want to get little projects on there that hopefully can become very, very big, because that will also help our network become very, very big as well.
Awesome. I really appreciate you, Michael. I mean, we're kind of coming up to the last little bit here, so I want to make like an announcement for our giveaway thing. I think we got our winners. I think we're probably going to just announce them on the Twitter, like in a reply to this. So check back like 15 minutes after the show ends, and we'll give that. But I got a couple questions for you. I want to squeeze the last amount of juice I got from you, dude. So, Michael, we got another starred comment here. What are your thoughts on the last 2 meme seasons? Did they make the kind of impact that you wanted?
Yeah, so they were, I would say, like semi-successful. So the purpose of the meme competitions was to generate like a lot of interest in the existing Fantom network as we were transitioning to the new Sonic network. And to some extent, it did drive like quite a bit of interest. I can just see it from like our engagement and different numbers. At the same time, though, obviously, like, it cost us a bit in the promotional activities, and it was all sort of like a bit temporary because obviously we're launching the new Sonic network, and that's where we want the activity to be on a more permanent basis. So, to be honest, like, it did generate some results for us, as I mentioned. I can see in the numbers, engagements, etc. But it wasn't as much as I, would have hoped for, that we would have hoped for as a team, and that's kind of okay because in the end, you have ideas, you execute upon them. Some of those ideas can work out really, really well. Other ideas are not going to work out as you expected, but that's how it is in the end, right? It's kind of hard to predict the future. That's what makes, life difficult in general. The future was easy to predict about every decision you've ever made, then that life would be very easy. You would just always make the right decision, whatever it might be. So the meme season competitions were not as successful as we would have hoped. But we only ran 2 seasons. We were planning, I think, originally to run 3 or 4, but for the reasons that I mentioned, the feedback, we decided to park that and instead focus on other initiatives that we kind of like spoke about now and elsewhere as well. So I would say that it was like in general semi-successful.
Yeah, and it's like you mentioned. I mean, sometimes things, you can't predict the future, and I still think it was like a big move. It was a big swing. I think in that regard, it was like, it made a lot of noise. It had a big splash out there for Fantom and Sonic. So, I mean, I still think, yeah, it was a very interesting idea, and I think you guys executed it well. But yeah, I think we're pretty much here at the top of the hour, so we don't want to keep you all day. Just want to say, like, we truly appreciate it. It means the world to us that you came on here, especially for episode 50. We appreciate everything you guys do for the network, and can't wait for Sonic. And I know Corval had like one last question for you.
Well, I also want to thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for giving us this hour. And I just have one more question. What's your favorite meme on Sonic, dude?
Well, I have a whole,